Alright, one more. And since we're on the topic of history, I figured the next one we should do is this one recommended by Malto himself. The Draka, an American dystopia. We're talking about some very interesting alternate history. Something that I feel like a lot of people enjoy, alternate history, where we get to indulge in scenarios of the great what-ifs.
Imagine it's 1750 and someone has just written a story about Britain's American colonies unifying, defeating the British Empire, and growing into a world-spanning power that dominates the technology, economy, and culture of humanity. It might be a good story with interesting characters, but the premise is absurd, right? For the most part, things have gone well for America. We've kinda had plot armor, and in that respect, among many others, the Draka are our evil twin.
The Draka. I thought he was going to say the Draka, but okay. Draka works well.
Tim Sterling has given us a distinctly American dystopian vision. As the author once famously proclaimed, "It's a dystopia, you twit." Two dystopias, really. The domination of the Draka as a worst-case projection from America's agrarian colonial origins, and the Alliance for Democracy as a bulked-up version of the militarized industrial behemoth that evolved after the Second World War. The domination of the Draka and the United States of America share an origin story. In both cases, we have British...
They took over everything! Damn! The whole of Africa, the whole of Europe, bar the British, and no one wants to go there, you know, they're kind of weirdos over there. Took over Russia, the whole Middle East, the whole of Asia, everything.
Colonies established on the edge of a continent full of resources and often hostile natives. The colonizers are vastly outnumbered, but enjoy a significant technological edge over the natives. More importantly, they are organized into much more efficient hierarchies able to bring their strengths to bear. Early America was a place where the Enlightenment ideas of European philosophers and the profit motive of early capitalism met a vast land full of possibilities. But under that...
Hey, Mose, welcome on in. How you doing, man? We're busy checking out some alternate history. The big what-ifs of the Draka.
Striving for liberty and the call of the frontier were the dark sides of slavery and extermination. These are two very different faces of early America, still a fracture point in modern politics. Both are true, but only when taken together. America gradually cast off its most onerous practices, struggling first to contain slavery before nearly being torn apart in a war that finally ended it in law, and decades more to end the last vestiges of it in practice. And the killing and forced relocation of the native tribes is now recognized as a shameful part of our past. Our better nature triumphed. America took a progressive path, trying to forge the founding ideals written by agrarian aristocrats with the democratic potential of industrialization. While the phrase American dream came into common use later, it's during this frontier period that the idea of America as a place where anyone can be successful through hard work starts to take shape.
The
Draka are a
This is literally me, chat. Unironically. Chiseled, manly, Afrikaner, Gigas Maximus, and 2 meters tall.
Utopian reflection of that early America embracing its darkest aspects. It's America's shadow in the Jungian sense. While slavery in the United States was always limited and early in our history became a regional practice primarily focused on a single industry, the Draka practiced it almost universally. Only a tiny fraction of the Draka population, at this early stage, the European settlers, were citizens. Everyone else was property, defined as serfs and technically debtors subjected to indentured servitude, but effectively slaves either of an individual, a business, or the state. Outright enslavement of the natives was forbidden by the British, but the proto-Draka quickly developed a system of indentured labor and debt peonage distinguishable only in name.
Woo, debt slaves. Why does that remind me of the one corporation from Ready Player One who did a similar thing?
In theory, only the debt and contract of indenture could be sold, but the distinction quickly became academic once the debts were made hereditary. Children of bondservants were automatically contracted to their parents' owners as they came of age. As technology progressed into ever more
steam-powered truck. Oh, nice. We got some steampunk in this too. That's pretty rad.
More complex and specialized branches, the Draka adapted their slave economy with equal specialization. Factories owned their own laborers and technicians. Wealthy citizens could...
We had this in 1975? That's crazy. Looks really nice. It actually looks like something that could have come out from the Command & Conquer Tiberium universe.
Buy a flying car that came complete with a mechanic to provide all the necessary maintenance. Most of the technical but tedious jobs were done by serfs, slaves in all but name. This forced them to create increasingly thin gradations in their subject populations as increasingly technical fields of serf work became necessary. Less than 100 million citizens in the domination, 1.5 billion serfs. We need millions with real education. The end result was to adapt agrarian slavery and Ottoman-style practices to a modern technological society, bringing it into the industrial age and turning into something new. It's like an extreme case of Stalinism in some ways. The population of workers is made to serve the needs of the state. Some dig ditches and some design rockets, but none of them have much real choice in the matter. But this also reflects trends in the United States. Since the 1970s, wage growth has slowed relative to inflation, and
That's probably by design, boys.
time spent at work, on call, and generally tethered by technology has increased while job security has become a punchline. The result has been to make American workers poorer and less secure while at the same time increasing the wealth gap between the ultra-wealthy and everyone else. This graph from the Congressional Budget Office illustrates it as well as any. They all have slightly different figures, but the story is the same. A large hereditary class controlling 80% or so of the wealth, while the remaining 20% is spread across the other 90% of the population, with that gap increasing. Now, I'm not going to go all Maoist here, but this is a problem. The Draka, like all great dystopias, show us an extreme example of problems in our own society.
Which is, I believe, the definition of a dystopia. When it's one particular problem in society that's taken to an extreme cranked up to 11.
Which puts a new perspective on one of the big critiques of the Draka series. The story is absurd because there's no way they control so many slaves, especially if they arm hundreds of thousands of them in Janissary battalions. But it's not slavery in the American plantation sense, it's more Stalinism. Why did millions of people accept bad housing, poor food, being spied on by the NKVD, and being shipped off to labor camps on spurious accusations? Why did the vast army of conscripts not revolt? Simply because no one wants to lead the charge because the front rank dies.
Wow, that is a really powerful sentence. No one wants to lead the charge because the front rank dies. This guy's writing fire right here. He's spitting some serious bars.
The weight of an entire society is a heavy thing to push against. The Draka also believe in their own national destiny. As they mastered the people of Africa, so shall they master all the people of the world. This mythos coincides with their social and economic constraints. It takes the reality that they can't survive long-term if a freer and more innovative society exists in competition, and it wraps it in a national mythos of conquest. They turn their greatest structural weakness.
His channel is great. He talks about all kinds of sci-fi. Dude, it's only like 6 minutes in. I'm already hooked. We'll just toss him a subscribe and a like up already, so that I don't forget later.
Into their greatest cultural strength. It's a blunter, cruder version of the grand myths of American society over our history. To be clear, I'm using myth in the sense of a grand narrative through which a culture views the world, like Greek mythology, not in the sense of a falsehood. That contrast with the Draka is that they not only begin with a harder, more brutal version of the conquest and mastery myth, but they stick with it throughout their entire history.
Wow.
Here in America, we've gone through a few of these myths, these grand narratives. While the term manifest destiny is generally cited as being coined in the 1840s, the idea of westward expansion has always been part of the United States. The 13 colonies pushed the frontiers into the Ohio Territory. President Jefferson bought the Louisiana Territory from Napoleon. The annexation of Texas and seizure of territory during the Mexican War.
And it just keeps on going until we got all 50 states, right, boys?
The acquisition of the Oregon Territory from Britain. This is echoed in the Draka boarding school depicted in the Stone Dogs. Now 1914, before the Great War, which, difficult as it may be to imagine, infants, I can remember. Muffled laughter, and the screen showed Africa alone in black, with outliers in Crete and Cyprus and Ceylon. 10-year intervals back to the beginning. The dark tide receded from the western bulge of the continent and from the interior. 1800, and Egypt went pale. 2 decades more, and there was nothing but a tiny black spot around Cape Town in the extreme south.
Ooh.
Having achieved dominion from sea to shining sea, the United States let the manifest destiny myth fade into history. Replacing it was an idea of steady progress as the new lands were settled. Irrigation made prairies into farms, technology would continue to make life easier, and the economy would continue to grow. The Great War wobbled that myth a little bit, and
A little bit of a waddle, hey chat.
then the combo punch of
Like a 600-pound man's fat rolls jiggling.
the Dust Bowl Great Depression in World War II knocked it right out of there. Then we became the free world, standing for liberty and justice against the horrid red tide of communism. And also, look at all the cool stuff that capitalism lets us have. It's a less inspiring narrative. Today we don't really have these great myths. Our democracy doesn't really cut it, and we don't have a real sense of national identity anymore.
Oh yeah, you go to an American rally, all you see is flags of other countries.
That loss has been happening for a long time, and it's reflected in the alliance. We can't look at the Draka in isolation. They do have an enemy, the Alliance for Democracy, an American creation like a supercharged NATO. The Alliance are themselves a dystopian vision, a militarized and paranoid vision of an America taken at the height of the Cold War and amplified. Sterling's depiction of the Alliance reflects what I've often referred to as the mating of the United States and Nazi Germany.
Okay, that is one heck of a combination. Very interesting.
It's shown in the way it dominates its allies, the militarization of society around a threat, but also in visual details that anchor it. For example, this description of the Alliance military uniform from Book 3, The Stone Dogs. They were all in the wolf-gray uniform of the Alliance military today. High green collars and epaulets and the American eagle on their cuffs. Frederick Lafarge had a captain's bars, his sister Mariah a lieutenant's. The older man a general's oak leaf clusters, although his position here made his authority nearly equal to that of a member of the Alliance combined staff. This could just as easily be used in something like The Man in the High Castle for a Waffen-SS Gruppenführer circa 1960-something.
Pretty interesting.
Just
Not
as
gonna
the
lie. This is basically trying to think now. It's basically almost like it's trying to describe as like Americans wearing Nazi uniform with a little bit of a slight dash of Americanism in it. Very interesting. I actually didn't realize that there were like 2 dystopian societies. Yeah, I thought it was okay, just the Draka with these like dystopian what ifs. But apparently it's also America also got a little bit of a dystopian dash in it.
The Draka are a pre-modern dystopian vision of where America might have gone. The Alliance is a post-World War II dystopia, combining the assimilation of Nazi Germany and the Cold War anxiety into a world-spanning empire of America and its vassal states. The Draka is the dystopian shadow of what we were. The Alliance is a shaded image of what we've become.
So it's like almost 2 sides of a coin, but they're both scribbled in with black.
The fact that the Alliance has redeeming qualities doesn't negate its dystopianism. That duality is integral to the American character. We're a nation founded by men fighting for liberty while owning slaves. We're a colony that fought for independence from a world-straddling empire, and now we've become the dominant power in the world with military bases on everyone's doorstep. America has always been kind of schizo. Now,
Yeah, you guys are crazy over there.
can be argued that America has saved the world from tyranny more than once, but we've also done our share of damn distasteful things, and our shining city on a hill has some rather noxious runoff for those downstream of it. But perhaps where the Alliance best captures modern America is in its portrayal of a nation that justifies its immense military spending, its shady surveillance, its clandestine coups and assassinations, as necessary to defend its people against a monstrous evil that must be defeated at any cost, yet is unwilling to actually commit to defeating it. When they finally possess the
I actually wonder why that would be the case. Like, wouldn't you want to defeat it, right? You can make the United States of Earth.
means to cripple the Draka, they lose their resolve. Your project will finally give us the top hand, and we'll use it, never fear. Not in an all-out surprise attack, of course, that was 70's strategy. will demonstrate it. With the balls cut off their space defense capacity, they'll have no choice but effectively to surrender, with guarantees for the personal safety of their top people, of course. The politicians are weak. They
Yes, this is always true.
lack a solid sense both of the nature and commitment of the threat, and they no longer see the alliance as a necessary military cooperation against a clear and present danger. It's become a normalized establishment populated by functionaries dedicated to upholding the status quo. They neither possess nor understand the cultural myths at work, and they assume that the Draka are just as milquetoast as they are. But a few intelligence
Well, this guy keeps teleporting all over the mountain. This is kind of wild.
officers, deep staters, take the initiative against the orders of the elected authorities, and they're only partly driven by ideology. The final war, the one that destroys the Alliance and gives the Draka dominion over an irradiated Earth, is ultimately triggered not by blustering politicians or calculating generals, but by a feud between two people, Frederick Lafarge and the Alliance and Yolanda Ingolfsson from the Domination.
Don't make the woman joke, don't make the woman joke, don't make the woman joke.
Manipulating their legal norms and systems for vengeance and a bit of ego. Are the Lafarges escaping me, or have I taken the most complete vengeance any human being has ever achieved? We might
Bold
fly
statements
between
there.
planets on atomic rockets, but we're still Stone Age murder monkeys up here in the brain pan.
That is something that is true for just about every kind of people.
Neither Alliance platitudes about peaceful solutions nor Draka prattle about a master race change that. Cultures are fluid, changing over time as populations shift. The Draka, like America, have colonial origins, but also had waves of immigration that had a profound impact on their culture and industry. But where America gradually expanded immigration to include not only Europeans, but people from all over the world, the Draka were restrictive and eventually cut it off entirely. The Draka that are depicted in the Stone Dogs are in many ways an almost mid-19th century American dystopia, as though a writer in 1860 were projecting things forward by blending southern plantation slavery with the English-style industrialization that was developing in the northern states.
This is some pretty creative work right here, not gonna lie.
It asks us, what if instead of a working class, there were just slaves? And
That's pretty much how we feel right now.
its entire world follows from that. It's horrifying and grotesquely plausible in some ways. By freezing
Caught.
immigration, the
Yep.
Draka also roughly lock in the ratio of citizens to serfs. This in turn provides a level of cultural reinforcement that isn't present in America. The Draka citizenry will never spawn an equivalent of social justice warriors because they are presented with the threat of being torn apart by a slave revolt on a daily basis. Their strength is propped up by their fear. In practical terms, this creates some problems, most notably at the end of the Stone Dogs. The war has reached a point where the Alliance can't possibly win or even hold its territory. But it has a lot of people and assets in space that can cause immense damage to the Draka and Earth's ability to sustain human life before going under. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm faced with a choice between death on one hand and slavery on the other, then I'm going with the Samson option and bringing it all crashing down on our heads.
Kaboom.
So the Draka have to make some compromises. We offer medic citizenship to any who surrender on Luna and beyond. That meant civil rights, but not the franchise, with full citizenship for their children. It's worth noting that while the Draka concept of citizenship began on a racial basis, as Karl von Schreckenberg explains while reminiscing on his youth at the end of the 19th century, I can remember when the thought of women bearing arms would have seemed fantastical.
As it should be.
Why, I can remember old men using white and black as synonyms for citizen and serf. A different world. While America became more inclusive, the Draka further defined and restricted who was a citizen and who was not, who was fully human and who was not. During the Eurasian War, what we think of as World War II, the Draka enslaved white people alongside everyone else.
Wait, what? Very surprising. I thought they wouldn't even do that. I figured that they only enslaved black people. But they enslaved white guys too? Okay, this is news to me.
This is one of the most important aspects of the Draka stories that a lot of the serious critics seem to miss. I've often seen them dismissed as racist adolescent white boy power fantasies, but this completely misses the core evil of the Draka. It's about how power, how the will to dominate grows, how injustice metastasizes from a small group to a larger one. There's a core message here of the need to stop slavery and tyranny before it becomes unstoppable. The entire series presents us with multiple points where the rest of the world could have decided, no, this can't continue. We have to stop them, no matter how distasteful the alliances to make it possible might be.
And let me guess, at each point they kept on saying, we'll allow it. This is fine. And then, then ended up where we are today. Damn. This is such a interesting topic to think about. Like, I think plausible dystopias are probably some of my favorite alternate history, ideas and concepts to wrestle with. Because there's a lot of what-ifs out there that are pretty horrifying that, given slightly different circumstances, could 100% have come into being. So, woof. But it's one thing, for there to be dystopia, but damn, this novel's apparently got 2 dystopias.
That's the tragedy of the first book, Marching Through Georgia. America, the land of the free, is so fixated on defeating Germany over the politics of the day that it assists the Draka and delivers all of Europe into slavery.
Wow. So, they were so focused on, this idea of, liberation and freedom, that they basically ended up having the complete opposite effect. And it caused the whole of Europe to be enslaved. That is oof. I feel like there's probably been a lot of situations throughout actual history where people have been so blinded by a certain goal or ideology that it ends up backfiring some other way.
They call their country the domination. It's spelled right out there. Power serves its own ends, and those who have it don't want to share it. The increasingly restrictive Draka citizenship is an illustration of the tendency for any ruling class to increase its collective power while restricting the ability to join it.
That is true, and that's something that you can kind of see hints of in today's society as well. They will increasingly make it harder for you to criticize them, for you to join them, for you to take away their power, etc., etc. I think, most of us know exactly who those people are.
The Draka definition of citizenship isn't what we understand as a legal framework defining what nation's taxes we have to pay, where we can vote, what legal protections we have. Draka citizenship is merely whether you were born into the aristocracy or not. If you were, you won the lottery. If you weren't, you can never be more than a slave. But serfs are given avenues to improve their conditions. If you're smart and obedient, they'll teach you to read and give you technical work that comes with better living arrangements, perhaps even a private room.
Wait, so you don't even get private rooms? You gotta study IT just so that you can goon in peace?
Young men can try to become janissaries, state-owned soldiers that enjoy better food and an easy retirement if they survive their military career.
That's a big if, though.
The non-citizen population is herded into competing against each other for the chance to get just a little closer to that upper class that they can never actually become part of. It's not all that far removed from our present-day class structure.
Told you so. I told you guys so. There was actually a lot of hints about it in today's current society.
While the conflict between the Draka and the Alliance is heavily influenced by the Cold War, it can also be seen as an allegory of a split in the American self-understanding. It not only pits a colonial agrarian slaveholding system against an industrial capitalist system, much like the American Civil War did, but in so doing, it reflects the America-centric worldview that dominates not only popular perception, but policymaking. American culture leaves a deep footprint around the world. The dollar is effectively the world currency, for the time being anyway. And
unless, maybe an asteroid hits America tomorrow. Be prepared, guys. Heavy nukes ready.
The American political class, regardless of party affiliation, consistently acts in its own interests. And the Draka novels slyly parody this. Both the Draka and the Alliance are British colonies that grew up. They have the same roots, they're siblings arguing over who inherits the earth. The Draka novels are a multi-layered study of America's history and culture. They highlight our failures. They show us the worst reflection, not only of who we were, but who we've become.
And maybe even who we could be. Well, you, I an American.
Read straight on, fully accepting their premise, they make us ask ourselves some tough questions. Now, I'm absolutely not saying that Under the Yoke is high literature on par with Orwell's 1984 or Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground. There's a bit too much lesbian sex between super fit women and
Too much gay.
the Draka books to take them entirely seriously. But that too is part of their American dystopian quality. Our
Chat, is it true that lesbians are part of dystopian quality?
culture has had a Puritan streak from the start, this modest propriety that we project, but underneath it there is a level of base carnality that can make a Roman nobleman blush. The Draka books throw that right in our face, a joke at our expense. And more broadly, the Draka trilogy does the same to our entire history, from the colonies to the Cold War. I know there's a fourth book, but Dracon is its own thing. We'll talk about that eventually.
Interesting. I love learning about this. Absolutely 10 out of 10 video right there. Subbed and liked, boys.